If that envelope had arrived 5 minutes later, I would have signed away the next 18 years of my life. That is the part one still think about when Christmas comes around and the first snow gathers on the porch rail. Not the tree, not the smell of cinnamon candles, not the sound of my mother humming old carols in the kitchen while the turkey cooled under foil. I think about my wife, Madison, sitting at our dining room table with one hand resting on her 7-month pregnant belly and the other hand sliding a pin toward me like it was nothing, like it was just another holiday tradition. Like men signed their lives away between mashed potatoes and pumpkin pie every December. My name is Ethan Walker. I was 39 years old then, a refrigeration systems technician in Columbus, Ohio, the kind of man who knew how to keep grocery warehouses cold through a July heat wave and fix a furnace at 2 in the morning without complaining. I was not rich. I was not flashy. I owned a 12-year-old Chevy Silverado, paid my mortgage on time, shoveled my own driveway, and believed a good husband showed up even when he was tired. That Christmas Eve, our little house looked warmer than it had any right to. White lights wrapped around the porch. Stockings hung from the mantel. A 6-foot Douglas fir stood in the corner, dressed in gold ribbon and ornaments Madison had picked out one by one during the years when I still thought every memory in that house belonged to both of us. The nursery down the hall smelled like fresh paint, soft cream walls, a wooden crib still missing 2 screws I planned to tighten after dinner. My mother, Linda, had brought sweet potato casserole. Madison's mother, Carol, had brought her opinion, like always. And Madison had brought papers. She waited until everyone had plates in front of them, until the room was glowing and harmless, until no decent man could raise a question without looking cruel. Then she smiled that soft public smile of hers and said, "Ethan, before we forget, the hospital wants these signed." I looked down at the folder. The top page had my name printed neatly beside the word father. Not penciled in. Not optional. Printed. Madison had already signed her part in blue ink. Her signature curved across the page like a ribbon tied around a trap. "It's just routine," she said, rubbing her belly slowly. "Insurance, birth certificate, legal stuff. You know how paperwork is." Carol gave a small laugh from across the table. "Don't make that face, Ethan. A baby is coming. This is what responsible fathers do." My mother did not say anything. She just watched me, and that made the room feel smaller. I picked up the pen. It felt heavier than a pen should feel. Outside, wind pushed snow against the window in soft little taps. Inside, Madison's eyes stayed fixed on my hand. Not my face. My hand. That was the first thing that turned my stomach cold. She did not look nervous like a wife asking for help. She looked like a woman waiting for a door to lock. I lowered the pen to the line, and right before the tip touched paper, the doorbell rang. Nobody moved at first. It was Christmas Eve, after 8 o'clock, and deliveries were supposed to be done for the night. Madison's smile twitched. Just once. Small enough that no one else caught it. But I did. I set the pen down and stood up. "I'll get it," I said. The hallway felt longer than usual as I walked to the front door. When I opened it, a young courier in a red parka stood under the porch light, holding a flat white envelope. "Ethan Walker?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me a clipboard, then the envelope. No Christmas card. No return address I recognized from family. Just the name of a medical testing lab printed in the corner. My fingers tightened around it before my mind understood why. Behind me, the dining room had gone quiet. Too quiet. I turned back with the envelope in my hand, and Madison's face had lost every bit of color Christmas lights could give it. I stood there in the hallway with the envelope in my hand, feeling the heat from the dining room behind me and the cold from the open door pressing against my back. For a second, I could hear everything too clearly. The tick of the wall clock, the soft hiss of the furnace kicking on, my mother shifting in her chair, Madison breathing through her nose like she was trying to stay calm without looking like she was trying. I shut the door and walked back slowly, not because I wanted drama, but because my legs had become careful. That is what fear does when it is old enough to know better. It does not always run. Sometimes it measures the floor. I set the envelope beside my plate and looked at Madison. "Were you expecting something?" I asked. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the envelope and back to me. "On Christmas Eve," she said with a little laugh that did not land. "No. Why would I be?" Carol leaned forward, already annoyed, already prepared to defend her daughter from a question no one had accused her with yet. "Ethan, open your mail later. Your wife is 7 months pregnant." She should not have to sit through one of your moods. That was Carol. She could turn a room against you before the room understood what had happened. I had spent 8 years learning how to swallow those little cuts. A comment about my work boots by the door. A sigh when I mentioned overtime. A smile that said Madison could have married someone with cleaner hands and better dinner jackets. I used to tell myself it did not matter. I was not married to Carol. I was married to Madison. And Madison, at least in the beginning, made me feel like a simple life could still be beautiful. We bought that house 5 years into our marriage. A modest 2-story on a quiet street where neighbors salted each other's sidewalks and kids rode bikes until the porch lights came on. It had a narrow garage, a half-finished basement, and a backyard just big enough for a grill, 2 lawn chairs, and the kind of summer evenings I thought people grew old inside. I was proud of it. Maybe too proud. Every monthly payment felt like proof that I could build something steady. Madison used to stand barefoot in the kitchen while I fixed cabinet hinges, teasing me for refusing to hire anyone. "You think every problem has a wrench size?" she would say. I would grin and tell her most of them did. Back then, she laughed like she believed me. Back then, she wore my old Ohio State sweatshirt on Sunday mornings and drank coffee, so sweet it barely counted as coffee. She would press her cold feet against my legs on the couch and talk about baby names long before we were ready. She wanted a family, at least that was what I thought. She wanted Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere, a child running down the stairs, cinnamon rolls in the oven, the whole American postcard. I wanted it too. Maybe that was the dangerous part. Wanting something badly can make a man generous with excuses. By the time she got pregnant, I had already trained myself to explain away the distance. She was tired. She was stressed. Her job demanded too much. Pregnancy changed people. I had heard all the reasonable sentences, and I used every one of them like boards over a cracked window. Madison worked as an event manager at the Harrington Grand downtown, one of those hotels with marble floors, gold elevators, and people who said networking like it was a moral virtue. She knew how to move through that world. Perfect dress, perfect smile, perfect little laugh for men in suits who thought charm was a form of currency. I did not fit there. I was the guy who showed up after a rooftop gala because her car battery died, wearing a work jacket that smelled faintly like Freon and metal dust. She used to run to me anyway. Later, she started meeting me outside instead, as if the lobby lights made me look smaller. I noticed. I just did not name it. That Christmas Eve, looking at her across the table, I saw the woman everyone else saw. Beautiful, pregnant, delicate, deserving of protection. But I also saw the fingers curled too tightly around her napkin. I saw the folder she had placed exactly between us. I saw the line where my signature was supposed to go, waiting like a quiet trap. The envelope sat beside it, unopened, white against the red table runner. Madison swallowed and reached for the pen again. "Can we please just finish this first?" she asked softly. "For the baby." And for the first time that night, I realized she was not afraid I would refuse. She was afraid I would read. I looked at the folder again, and this time I did not see paperwork. I saw timing. Madison had waited until Christmas Eve because Christmas makes a man look guilty for asking practical questions. A decorated tree in the corner can turn suspicion into cruelty. A pregnant wife at the table can make a husband look heartless just for reading the fine print. Carol knew that. Madison knew it better. The pages were arranged neatly, clipped at the corner, with yellow tabs marking every place my name belonged. I picked up the top sheet and read slower than I needed to, partly because my hands needed something to do, partly because every line felt like it had been written by someone who expected me not to understand it. Legal acknowledgement of paternity, voluntary assumption of parental responsibility, consent for birth certificate filing, insurance designation. The words were clean and ordinary, but they had weight. They were not just hospital forms. They were hooks. Once signed, they would not care about Christmas, feelings, tears, or explanations. They would have my signature, and signatures have a way of surviving longer than love. "Ethan," Madison said, her voice low and careful, "you are making this uncomfortable." I looked up. "I am reading what you asked me to sign." Carol scoffed and set down her fork. "For heaven's sake, it is for your child." My mother finally spoke, quiet but firm. "Let him read." The room shifted when she said that. Not much, just enough for Madison's eyes to sharpen. Linda Walker did not raise her voice. She had buried a husband, raised 2 boys, taught 3rd grade for 32 years, and learn the kind of calm that makes louder people feel foolish. Madison smiled at her, but the smile had edges. Of course he can read, Linda. I just did not think my husband needed a legal seminar over Christmas dinner. Then why bring it out over Christmas dinner? I asked. The question sat between us, plain and ugly. Madison blinked once. Carol's mouth tightened. My mother looked down at the envelope beside my plate, then back at me. No one touched their food. The turkey was cooling. The gravy had formed a skin. The candles kept burning like nothing had changed. That is the strange thing about moments like that. The ordinary objects do not know your life is leaning over a cliff. A spoon stays a spoon. A glass of iced tea keeps. Sweating onto a coaster. A Christmas song can still play softly from the kitchen while trust drains out of a room. Madison placed her palm over her belly and took a breath that sounded practiced. Because I wanted this to be a family moment, she said. I wanted everyone here when we made it official. Made what official? I asked. That you are his father. His. The word should have warmed me. We had learned the baby was a boy 6 weeks earlier, in a clinic with blue walls and a technician who smiled too much. I had stared at the grainy image on the monitor and felt my throat close with a kind of joy I did not know men were allowed to show. A son. I had gone home and built the crib the same night, even though the instructions said 2 people were required. Madison had watched from the doorway, arms folded, smiling in a way I now could not read. At the table, I turned the second page over. Near the bottom, beside Madison's signature, was a date. December 10th. 2 weeks earlier. My stomach tightened. You signed this already. Her eyes dropped for half a second. I told you. It is routine. You signed it 2 weeks ago. Because my part was simple. And mine needed witnesses? Carol leaned back like I had offended the walls. You are twisting this. No. I said, keeping my voice even. I am noticing it. Madison's face changed then. Not into anger. Not exactly. Into calculation. It was quick, but I caught it. The same look she got when a caterer canceled at the Harrington Grand, and she had to rearrange a ballroom before guests arrived. A problem had appeared, and she was deciding which version of herself could fix it. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her fingers were warm. Mine felt like they belonged to someone else. Ethan, please, she whispered. I am scared. The baby is coming soon. I need to know you are with me. That almost worked. 8 years of marriage gives a person keys to rooms inside you that no one else can enter. She knew exactly where to press. The tired husband. The hopeful father. The man who wanted peace more than pride. But the envelope was still there. White, flat, silent. And Madison kept looking at it like it could speak. I did not open the envelope right away. That might sound strange, but any man who has ever stood at the edge of a life-changing truth will understand. Sometimes the truth can sit 3 inches from your hand and still feel too far away to touch. I kept my eyes on Madison's hand covering mine, on the pale pink polish she had chosen for the holidays, on the wedding ring I had paid for in monthly installments back when we were 29 and still counting grocery money. 8 years earlier, I had believed that ring meant we were building something no weather could take down. We met at a charity fundraiser downtown, before Madison worked at the Harrington Grand, back when she was coordinating small nonprofit events and wearing flats because she could not afford the kind of heels she later loved. I had come straight from a service call at a cold storage facility outside Grove City, still wearing my work jacket because a compressor had failed and the whole place was sweating through frozen inventory. I should have gone home. Instead, a friend dragged me there, and Madison laughed when I apologized for smelling like machine oil. At least you smell employed, she said. That was the first thing I loved about her. She could make ordinary feel chosen. Our first apartment had drafty windows and a refrigerator that groaned like an old dog. I fixed what I could. She decorated what I could not. We ate frozen pizza on paper plates and talked about the kind of house we would own someday, the kind with a porch, a guest room, and a nursery we were too scared to name out loud. When money got tight, I took extra shifts. When her student loans came due, I helped pay them. When she cried after long days with difficult clients, I rubbed her feet and told her the world would catch up to her talent. I meant it. A husband should believe in his wife before the rest of the world does. That was how I saw it. So when her career started climbing, I was proud. The Harrington Grand hired her first as an assistant event coordinator, then promoted her to manager after she saved a conference weekend from collapsing when a snowstorm shut down half the vendors. She came home, glowing that night, cheeks red from cold and victory, and I opened a bottle of grocery store champagne on the back steps. I still remember her saying, "We are finally becoming the people we promised we would be." I believed that too. I believed a lot of things because believing felt easier than measuring what they cost. My job was not glamorous, but it was steady. Hospitals, warehouses, grocery chains, office towers, anywhere heating and cooling mattered more than people realized until it stopped working. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. In Ohio, weather does not care about family plans. A freezer line can fail on Thanksgiving. A hotel boiler can die during a January wedding. I missed dinners. I missed parties. I missed one anniversary because a distribution center near Dayton was about to lose $200,000 in product if we did not get the system back online. Madison said she understood. At first, I think she did. Later, understanding turned into tolerance. Then tolerance turned into silence. The kind of silence that does not slam doors. It just removes warmth from rooms 1 degree at a time. She started going to more hotel events without me. She said it was easier because I always looked tired. She said I never knew what to talk about with her colleagues. She said I made myself uncomfortable and then blamed the room. Maybe some of that was true. I never knew what to do with men who laughed too loudly over bourbon and called each other brother after 2 conversations. I never liked suits that cost more than my mortgage payment. But I showed up when she asked, until she stopped asking. Then the pregnancy came, and for a while, I thought we had found our way back. I painted the nursery. I built shelves. I read reviews for car seats like I was studying for a license exam. I talked to her belly at night when she pretended to be asleep. I told that little boy about snow, baseball, Saturday pancakes, and how his grandmother Linda made the best apple pie in Franklin County. I gave my whole heart to a future I had not held yet. Sitting at that Christmas table, with Madison asking me to sign and the unopened envelope lying beside my plate, all those memories moved through me like old home movies projected on a cracked wall. I wanted them to be real. I wanted the woman across from me to be scared for innocent reasons. I wanted the papers to be routine, the timing to be coincidence, the envelope to be nothing. But deep down, in the quiet place men ignore until it starts keeping them awake, I already knew something had been wrong for months. The date on the form was not the beginning. It was just the first piece that finally stayed still long enough for me to see it. The name Ryan Calloway did not arrive in my life like a thunderclap. It arrived politely, one harmless mention at a time. That is how certain troubles enter a marriage. They do not kick the door open. They hang their coat by the entrance and wait until you stop noticing they are there. The first time Madison said his name, we were eating takeout lo mein at the kitchen island while rain tapped against the windows. She was 6 weeks into her new management role at the Harrington Grand, exhausted but bright-eyed, talking fast about banquet schedules, vendor contracts, and a winter charity gala that had half the city acting important. Ryan says I need to stop saving everyone, she said, smiling down at her noodles. I remember looking up from my plate. Who is Ryan? She waved the question away. Ryan Calloway, operations director. He basically keeps the hotel from falling apart. I almost joked that sounded like my job, only with better carpet. But she kept talking, and I let it pass. A week later, Ryan had recommended a restaurant. 2 weeks after that, Ryan had helped smooth over a problem with a florist. Then Ryan had connections. Ryan had taste. Ryan understood how high-pressure events worked. The name became part of the furniture. At first, I was not jealous. I was busy. There is a difference men do not admit until later. I was driving between service calls, crawling through mechanical rooms, coming home with my knees stiff and my hands smelling like copper pipe and insulation dust. Madison was moving through marble lobbies, rooftop receptions, and conference rooms full of people who knew how to make ambition sound elegant. Our worlds had always been different, but now the distance had an address, a title, and a tailored navy suit. I met him in person at a fundraiser in March. Madison had asked me to come, then spent the drive reminding me not to look bored, not to talk too much about work, not to wear the boots with the scratched toe. The Harrington Grand Ballroom was all crystal light and white tablecloths, the kind of room where even the forks looked judgmental. Ryan found us near the bar. He was tall, clean-shaven, early 30s maybe, with expensive confidence and the easy smile of a man used to being welcomed. So this is Ethan, he said, offering his hand. Not Madison's husband. Not the man I have heard so much about. This is Ethan. like I was an item finally delivered. I shook his hand anyway. Madison laughed too quickly, touching his sleeve as she told him to behave. It was a small thing. A touch. A laugh. A half-second too familiar. Nothing a man could point to without sounding insecure. That was the genius of it. Every moment was too small to accuse, but too sharp to forget. Over the next few months, Madison changed in ways that looked reasonable from a distance. She bought new dresses because the job required polish. She stayed late because events ran long. She changed her phone passcode because, as she put it, hotel clients deserved privacy. She turned her screen face down because the light bothered her eyes. She started using phrases I had never heard from her before, things like brand alignment and executive presence, and somehow my name began sounding heavier in her mouth. Ethan, you would not understand. Ethan, it is complicated. Ethan, do not make this weird. Then came the baby. For a little while, Ryan disappeared from the surface of our conversations, but not from the edges of our life. I saw his name flash across her phone during a doctor's appointment. I saw a gift bag from the Harrington Grand in her back seat, tucked under a scarf like it had done something wrong. When I asked, she said the staff had sent it. Blue baby blanket. Silver rattle. A card signed with one bold initial, R. I stared at that letter longer than I should have. Madison kissed my cheek and told me I was tired. Maybe I was. Tired men can doubt their instincts because exhaustion makes every fear look dramatic. But the calendar did not get tired. Dates stay where you put them. In late September, I had been in Cleveland for 16 days straight, helping restore a cold storage system after a power surge damaged 2 compressor racks. I slept in a budget hotel off Interstate 71, ate gas station sandwiches, and called Madison every night when the signal held. When I got home, she hugged me at the door with tears in her eyes and told me she was pregnant. I lifted her off the floor before she told me not to, laughing like a fool, thanking God in the hallway. Later, when the first ultrasound estimated the pregnancy further along than I expected, she said doctors measured differently. I wanted to believe her, so I did. That is what love can become when a man is not careful. Not trust. Permission to ignore math. I did not confront Madison after the ultrasound. That was the first decision that kept me from losing myself. The younger version of me might have demanded answers in the clinic parking lot, voice tight, hands shaking, letting fear drive the truck. But by then I had spent almost 20 years fixing systems that failed quietly. You learn something in mechanical rooms at 3 in the morning. The loudest noise is not always the problem. Sometimes the real damage hides behind a normal reading, a smooth panel, a green light that should have turned red. So I went quiet. Not cold. Not cruel. Just observant. I started checking dates the way I would check pressure levels on a refrigeration line. Madison said the due date was early February. The first ultrasound suggested late January. The appointment notes were vague enough to comfort a man who wanted comfort, but not vague enough to fool one who had stopped begging the numbers to be kind. I pulled up my work calendar from September. Cleveland. 16 days. Hotel receipts. Fuel charges. Service logs. My signature on completed repair orders. I had proof of where I was, and more importantly, proof of where I was not. That realization did not explode inside me. It settled, heavy and square, like a concrete block placed carefully in the center of my chest. I began saving everything, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I had a feeling I would need facts when feelings started lying. I downloaded my travel records. I copied the ultrasound dates. I took pictures of the forms Madison left on the kitchen counter. I noted when Ryan called, not the content, just the time. 11:18 at night. 6:42 in the morning. Sunday afternoon during my mother's birthday lunch. Madison always had explanations ready. The hotel never sleeps. Ryan is short-staffed. You know how events are. Every sentence came wrapped in reason, but reason can still smell wrong. One Saturday in November, Madison said she had a vendor walkthrough at the Harrington Grand. I had planned to assemble the dresser for the nursery, but a missing screw packet sent me to the hardware store downtown. On the way back, I passed the hotel and saw her near the valet stand. She was not alone. Ryan stood close enough that falling snow landed on the same shoulder line between them. He handed her a paper cup, the kind from the hotel coffee bar, and she laughed before taking it. Not a big laugh. Not proof. Just the kind of laugh I had not heard in our kitchen for a long time. Then he touched her lower back as she turned toward the lobby. A guiding touch, brief and public, clean enough for strangers. but my body understood it before my mind gave it permission. I drove home without stopping. The dresser stayed in pieces on the nursery floor that night. Madison came home after dark, cheeks pink from cold, carrying peppermint cookies from the hotel bakery. She kissed my forehead and asked why the room was not finished. I said I needed a different screwdriver. Another lie to keep peace with a woman who had become fluent in them. The DNA test came into the story because of a brochure I found in her purse. I was not searching for it. Her purse had tipped over on the passenger seat, spilling receipts, lip balm, and a folded pamphlet from a prenatal clinic on the east side of town. Not her regular clinic. Not the place we had visited together. This one offered non-invasive prenatal testing, including paternity screening, with a simple blood draw and cheek swab. My hands went still when I read it. Madison walked in from the garage before I could fold it back. Her eyes dropped to the pamphlet, and for 1 second the mask slipped. "A coworker gave me that," she said too quickly. I nodded. I did not accuse her. I did not ask which coworker. The next day, I called the clinic during my lunch break from a hospital maintenance job in Westerville. My voice sounded calm, almost boring, as I asked how testing worked, what consent was required, what could be done legally, and how results were delivered. The woman on the phone explained everything with professional patience. I scheduled a consultation under my own name and told myself I was only gathering information. Men say that when they are already moving, gathering information, keeping options open, making sure. But the truth was simpler. I had stopped trying to prove Madison innocent. I had started trying to prove I was not crazy. By early December, I had done the test. Proper forms, proper identification, no drama, just a white room, a cotton swab, a nurse who had probably seen that look in a man's eyes before and was kind enough not to name it. The results were supposed to arrive before Christmas. Then they were delayed. Weather, holiday volume, some routine processing issue. Madison did not know I had completed my part. At least, I did not think she knew. But 2 weeks before Christmas, she signed those paternity papers. And sitting at that dining room table with my family watching, I finally understood. She was not rushing because the baby was coming. She was rushing because the truth was. Christmas Eve came back into focus around me, one small sound at a time. The furnace hummed through the floor vents. A fork shifted against a plate. Snow brushed the window like a hand trying not to knock. Madison sat across from me with that practiced softness on her face, but her eyes kept betraying her, slipping from my hand to the envelope and back again. I could see the whole plan now, not because she confessed, but because pressure reveals the shape of things. She had chosen the night carefully. My mother at the table, her mother beside her. A house full of Christmas lights, a baby almost here, and a folder dressed up as responsibility. If I questioned it, I would look suspicious. If I hesitated, I would look cruel. If I refused, I would be the man who ruined Christmas for a pregnant wife. It was clean, almost elegant. That was what made it hurt. Madison did not need me convinced. She needed me surrounded. "Ethan," she said, and this time her voice had a tremble in it. Not enough to seem fake, just enough to make everyone lean toward her. "I do not know what you think is happening, but this is humiliating. I wanted tonight to be special." Carol reached for her daughter's shoulder like a courtroom witness finding her cue. "It is special, sweetheart. He is the one making it ugly." I looked at my mother. Linda's face had gone pale, but her eyes were steady. She gave the smallest nod. Not permission, strength. There is a difference, and a man knows it when his mother has loved him long enough to stop protecting him from pain. I turned back to Madison. "Why tonight?" I asked. "Because we are all together." "No," I said softly. "Why before the baby is born?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out right away. "Because hospitals ask for these things." "Then why not bring them to the next appointment?" "Because I forgot. You signed them on December 10th. The room held its breath. Madison's fingers tightened around the napkin in her lap. "I already explained that." "You explained around it." Carol made a sharp sound of disbelief. "Are you hearing yourself? Your wife is carrying your child, and you are cross-examining her over dates." The words should have cut deeper. A month earlier, they would have. I would have backed down to keep the peace, because peace had been the God I served in that house. Not truth. Peace. But once you have seen the foundation crack, you stop admiring the paint. I picked up the folder and turned another page. "This says I acknowledge legal paternity voluntarily and without dispute." Madison's voice rose half an inch. "Because there is no dispute. Then there should be no rush." Ryan Calloway had not been invited to our family Christmas in any normal version of the world, but there he was, standing near the kitchen doorway with a glass of sparkling cider in his hand, wearing a charcoal sweater and the careful expression of a man pretending to be extra furniture. Madison had said earlier that he had nowhere to go for the holiday after his flight to Denver got canceled. I had not argued. At the time, it felt strange but charitable. Now it felt like arrogance. He had watched me nearly sign. He had watched the trap close. And when I looked at him, his eyes moved away first. That small retreat said more than any confession could have. "Ryan," I said. His head lifted. Madison's face snapped toward me. "Do not," she whispered. "Not do not embarrass me. Not do not accuse him. Just do not." A word with a locked door behind it. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence stretch until everyone could feel its weight. "Since you are here," I said, "maybe you can tell me why my wife seems so afraid of an envelope from a medical testing lab." The air went dead. Ryan set his glass down too carefully on the counter. Madison's breathing changed. Carol looked from her daughter to him, and for the first time all night, even she had no sentence ready. The envelope lay beside my plate, untouched, as white as the snow gathering outside. Madison tried one last time. Her eyes filled. Her hand went to her belly. "Ethan, please. Just sign it. Be the father this baby deserves." That was the line she had saved. The line meant to make me forget dates, signatures, late calls, Ryan's hand on her back, and 16 days in Cleveland that no calendar could erase. I looked at the pen, then at the envelope, then at the woman I had loved long enough to become dangerous to myself. "No," I said, my voice calm enough to surprise even me. First, we read. I picked up the envelope with both hands because one hand did not feel steady enough. The paper was cold from the porch, or maybe that was just my fingers. Madison whispered my name once, small and broken, but I did not look at her. If I looked too soon, I knew I might see the woman I married instead of the woman who had cornered me at my own Christmas table. There are moments when mercy becomes another kind of blindness, and I had been blind long enough. I slid my thumb under the sealed edge and tore it open. The sound was tiny, almost disrespectful to the size of what it carried. One strip of paper giving way, one room forgetting how to breathe. I pulled out the report and unfolded it slowly. The lab logo sat at the top. My name, Madison's name, case number, collection dates, chain of custody, ordinary words, clean words, words that had no idea they were about to end a marriage. My eyes moved down the page, but my mind resisted for half a second, like a man stepping onto ice and hearing the first crack beneath his boot. Then I saw it. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. I read it once, then again, not because it was unclear, because the body needs time to accept what the soul already knew. 0.00%. No gray area. No maybe. No miracle hidden between the numbers. The baby Madison carried was not mine. The room did not erupt. That surprised me. I had imagined, in those dark weeks before Christmas, that truth would arrive with shouting, crying, chairs scraping, someone demanding explanations. Instead, it landed softly on the red table runner beside the folded napkins and cooling gravy. It made almost no sound at all. That was the worst part. The quiet. The way my mother covered her mouth with one hand and closed her eyes. The way Carol's face emptied before pride rushed back in to refill it. The way Ryan stared at the floor like the hardwood might open and offer him somewhere to go. Madison made a sound then, not a word, just breath folding in on itself. "Ethan," she said. I placed the report next to the paternity papers she had already signed. Side by side, they looked like two versions of the same life. One built from ink, one built from fact. "You wanted me to sign before this arrived?" I said. My voice came out low, level, almost unfamiliar. "That is what tonight was." Madison shook her head, but the movement had no strength. I was scared. "Of what?" I asked. "The truth, or the consequences?" Carol stood up so quickly her chair scraped back, but even that sound felt careful. Compared to what was sitting on the table. "This is private," she snapped. "You had no right to humiliate her in front of everyone." I looked at her then, really looked at her. For 8 years, I had let Carol Bennett speak to me like I was a guest in the life I paid for. I had swallowed her little insults, her polished disappointment, her constant suggestion that Madison had settled. But that night, The old habit of shrinking under her tone finally died. She asked me to sign in front of everyone. I said. She made it public when she needed witnesses. Carol's mouth opened, then closed. Linda lowered her hand from her face. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Ethan, do not sign anything. I will not, I said. Madison reached across the table for the report, but I moved it out of her reach and folded it back into my hand. Not angry, not dramatic, just done letting other people handle the truth like it belonged to them. Ryan finally spoke. This is between you two. I turned toward him. He looked smaller than he had at the hotel, away from chandeliers and polished floors, away from the world where his confidence had worked like a credit card with no limit. No, I said. You are standing in my kitchen on Christmas Eve while my wife tries to make me legally responsible for a child that is not mine. You do not get to become background noise now. Madison's tears came harder. She said she was confused, that timing was complicated, that she did not know how to tell me. Each sentence tried to soften the shape of what she had done, but the paper had already cut it clean. I looked at the folder, the pen, the report, then at the woman I had once promised to grow old beside. You made one mistake, I said quietly. You thought the truth would wait until after my signature. Outside, snow kept falling over the porch lights, soft and silent. Inside, Christmas dinner sat untouched, and the life I had been asked to claim finally showed me it had never been mine. The first thing I did after the room went silent was put the pen in my shirt pocket. It was a small thing, almost foolish, but I needed one clear action that belonged to me. The folder stayed on the table. The report stayed in my hand. Madison cried into both palms while Carol rubbed her shoulder and stared at me like I had set fire to the holiday instead of refusing to stand inside the smoke. Ryan left without finishing his drink. He did not make a speech. Men like him rarely do when the lights come on. He murmured something about giving us space, grabbed his coat from the back of a chair, and stepped into the snow with the careful speed of a man trying not to look like he was running. I watched the door close behind him and felt nothing dramatic. No victory, no satisfaction, just a clean, hollow stillness where rage should have been. Madison kept saying my name, then sorry, then my name again, as if repeating familiar words could rebuild what the numbers had erased. I did not argue with her. I did not ask how long. I did not ask where or why or whether she loved him. Those questions belonged to a husband still bargaining with the wreckage. I was past bargaining. I looked at my mother and said, I am going to pack a bag. Linda stood slowly. I will help you. Carol snapped that I was abandoning a pregnant woman on Christmas Eve. I paused at the hallway and turned back. No, Carol. I am leaving a lie before it becomes a legal document. That was the last full sentence I spoke in that dining room. Upstairs, the bedroom looked untouched by truth. Madison's sweater folded over the chair. My watch on the dresser. A framed photo from our 5th anniversary in the Smoky Mountains. Both of us smiling like the camera had caught proof instead of hope. I packed work clothes, documents from the safe, my laptop, chargers, and the small stack of records I had already copied. My mother stood by the door holding the DNA report in a folder she had found from my desk. She did not tell me it would be okay. Good mothers know when that sentence is too cheap. She only said, come home tonight. So I did. I slept in my childhood room beneath a ceiling fan that clicked every third turn, staring at shadows from the streetlight until morning turned the windows gray. By 8 o'clock on December 25th, I had called. An attorney whose emergency number a coworker had given me months earlier during his own divorce. By the next week, I had filed the proper paperwork, refused to sign any acknowledgement of paternity, separated my accounts, and sent every document through counsel. No shouting matches. No midnight debates. No emotional traps disguised as conversations. Madison sent messages for weeks. Some were apologies. Some were explanations. Some blamed fear, pressure, confusion, hormones, her mother, Ryan, even me working too much. I read them once, saved them, and answered only through my attorney. That boundary saved me more than pride ever could. The baby was born in late January. I was not at the hospital. I did not sign the birth certificate. A later legal process confirmed what the Christmas report had already told us, and Ryan Calloway's name eventually entered the paperwork where mine had almost gone. People ask whether that made me feel better. It did not. Truth does not always comfort you. Sometimes it simply stops the bleeding from being called love. I sold the house that spring. Before the closing, I walked through it alone one last time. The Christmas decorations were long gone, but I could still see where the tree had stood. The nursery door was open. The crib remained half assembled, one side rail leaning against the wall, the little cream-colored room holding its breath. I stepped inside for less than a minute. I ran my hand over the smooth wood, then set the missing screws on the windowsill. I did not cry there. Grief is not always loud enough to honor what happened. Sometimes it is just a man leaving a room before it teaches him to hate himself. A year later, Christmas came again. I was in a smaller place on the north side of Columbus, an apartment over a bakery where the stairwell smelled like bread every morning. My mother came over with apple pie. We ate at a little table by the window while snow fell over the parking lot. There was no perfect tree, no crowded dining room, no folder waiting beside a plate. Just quiet, honest quiet. And for the first time in months, quiet did not feel like punishment. It felt like air. That Christmas did not take my family from me. It took the story I had been forced to live inside and handed me the truth, cold and clean, before my signature could turn it into a cage. I did not lose a child that night. I lost a lie. And sometimes, when a man finally stops calling a lie his home, the silence that follows is the first honest thing he has heard in years.